So the question is, who's the trustee? In this particular example, it doesn't really matter. It's some financial instrument that our company that's got to deal with the bank. The example that you would be familiar with would be GMAC is the financing arm for GM Automotive. All right? So there are banks out there that probably work with an attorney or some financial group that is their whole job, is to be a housing or a clearinghouse for that bank in those states. The reason you don't recognize that is probably because you've lived in Indiana most of your life and we don't use that system. All right? I don't know who said that, but I hope that answers the question. All right? The best that I can attribute it to is the GMAC concept. That's who the financing person is. That's who does it, all of that. Now let's talk about the mortgage and the deed of trust for a second. And we're going over to page 245. When you become the mortgagor or the trustor in the deed of trust state, there are certain obligations that you owe to your fiduciary person because they've loaned you money. Here's some that you guys probably don't even know existed. You've got to make sure that you make the payments on time. You promise that. Make sure the property is well maintained so it doesn't get in disrepair. Here's a funny one. Did you guys know if you fix your property, you rehab it or work on it or change it, you're actually supposed to get permission to do that. If you're going to add a deck to your house, you're supposed to call your bank. Let them know. Ask their permission. Because you are changing the collateral that is securing the loan that they borrowed you. They loaned you. Suppose you're putting a deck on a house and your foot slips off the tractor and you drive through the back of the house and tear the back half of the house off. How much is their collateral worth now? Yeah. So technically, if you alter the appearance of your property, you're supposed to get permission to do it. I don't know anybody that ever has. I just gave you the example. You just destroyed the collateral that's backing this $100,000 loan. This house is now worth 20 grand. Well, that's what they're thinking about, is the damage. Yeah. If you had a second story, if you do, you're supposed to, because you could potentially modify the value of the collateral. And you're saying on your side of the table, well, sure, I want to. I want it to go up. The lender, like she said, Miss Pessimist back there, you could actually lower it because you don't know what you're doing. You went in there and you had your brother, who was half drunk, wire that new framing, and he, later that night, that typical bad wiring, now just burnt the house down and they got no collateral. So if you do stuff, you are supposed to get permission. All right? Huh. Well, who'd have thunk it? You get building permits, you think. Yeah. In New York, they will make you get mortgage. Yeah. Well, you're supposed to in every state. I can tell you I've never done it. I didn't even get the homeowner's permission. Friday, there was no deck. Monday morning, ta-da, there was a deck there. Happened over the weekend, like mushroom. Popped up. So are there penalties? Yeah. We're going to talk all about some penalties. Yeah. Are you panicking? No. Okay. We're going to be in the house a while. Maybe. She said they're going to be in the house a while. Depends. One of the penalties is called the acceleration clause. Now. So, as the person that is the borrower of the money, you have duties. Don't let your property get disrepair. Don't let taxes pile up. Don't let it go to the tax sale. Don't let it get condemned. Maintain the property in good working order. Now, if something happens and you go into default on your IOU, default has a definition. it doesn't mean late. Payments due on the 1st, late on the 5th, that's late. Default is defined in your note and your mortgage, which typically says something to the effect of 2 consecutive months without a payment. Now you're in default. All right? Once default kicks in, there are certain things that happen. All right? I was at a closing a couple months ago, and typically I had this young girl. She was single, buying a house, and the mortgage is standard. She starts reading the mortgage, and it's like 28 pages. And she's like, well, what's this word? Well, what's this word? And she said, my dad told me I should read every document. I said, well, if I'd have known that, I'd have gotten the mortgage to you sooner, because we're certainly not going to sit here for hours. So the title company guys, let me give you a hint. This is the best story I ever heard. If you make your payments on time, there's nothing in there that's going to hurt you. Conversely, if you get in trouble, there's nothing in there that's going to help you. And he said, that's the key to this whole thing. So we went through each paragraph and said, here's what this paragraph means. That's what we're going to do right now. All right? If you go into a default, there's a paragraph called the acceleration clause. The acceleration clause says, you have proven yourself unworthy. We're not worthy. We want our money back now because you have done something like put a second story on the house and didn't ask our permission. Potentially they have the right to do that. Now, when they call the acceleration clause due, they are not calling the other 350 payments at 500. No, they're calling the outstanding balance due. All right? So you've made 2 or 3 payments. You still owe another 27 years, and they call their loan due. They're not going to call 27 times 550. No, they're going to call, well, you owe us based on this math equation. We loaned you 90. You now still owe us 83. We want 83,000 today. And if not today, yesterday. All right? That's called the acceleration clause. So how do I give them back the 83,000 on the house today? I heard several things. I'm going to hear one more. Somebody say it again. Sell the house. You guys are the genius class. Because typically, has anybody got any other ideas? Everybody goes, give the house back. No, that's the last thing you want to do.
Refinance.
Yeah. Probably aren't going to refinance because you're already in trouble. That's why you're 3 or 4 months behind, but it's a good idea. That would be your second. Your first idea is that's how we get involved in this. And remember the equation or the story problem I told you a couple weeks ago or days ago? I'm in trouble with my bank. I just want to sell the property, pay it off, and walk away. And we did that math on the minimum amount because of this. Acceleration clause got activated. They've missed several payments. They've lost their job. They've gone into default. The bank has called and said, we want our $83,000 back, or in that particular example, it was $100,000, and they call you up and go, hey, Raymond, bank's on my butt. I need to sell it and walk away. Whatever the minimum is, what do I do? Okay, you owe 100. You got to pay 150, 1,500 in closing. Raymond's going to charge you 7%. Do the math. What was it? 109,283. That's where we start. Can't go anything below that because the acceleration clause has been called due. Once you go into default, they want their money and they want it now. Because this note has value, I told you that Joe here would pay 110 for the 100,000, so I sell him the note. But he doesn't want the bark. What does he also want? He wants the collateral. He wants the bite in this too, because the bark without the bite is worthless. The bark being the IOU, the bite being the collateral. So because this collateral, which is a mortgage, really has no value, I can't sell it to him. So what I do is assign it to him. Remember what an assignment is? Contract stays the same, Can't put a prepayment in it. And the parties change. Now Raymond has sold Joe the note and assigned the mortgage to him, and I'm out of the deal. Now it's all his. He's got the mortgage-backed security. He's got the bark and the bite. So you sell the note, assign the mortgage to go with it. That's how I make money. I made 10 grand on this. Imagine doing that thousands of times a day. That's called a pool or a block. And that's how banks sell mortgages in pools. And they'll sell them to different people, just like I told you.
That's why they sell. I got my loan through the mortgage broker that Tucker had.
Yeah?
They sold me like right away.
Yeah.
They just made money selling me. Is that what happened?
They made money selling you, and they got their money back, because, see, that's how I got my money back. Remember, Clampett gave me that 100 grand. I loaned it to Min, who signed the IOU. Clampett doesn't want $556 a month. What's he want? He wants his 100 grand back. So what I do is I sell it to you for 110, give Clampett his money with some interest, and I made some money on that deal. That's called financial services. There was an econ professor at A&M when I was there. Check this out. This is a cool story. I can't remember exactly, and I keep saying I'm going to call him and get this true story, but I get the general gist of this. You guys make me paranoid when you start staring outside the door. She is coming out of the, oh, never mind. Guy walks into a hotel room and says, I want to rent a room here for the night, but I want to go look at the room, so here's my $100. I'm going to lay it right here on the counter. I want to go look at the room to see if I like it. So the owner of the hotel says, I owe my, see, how'd that go? I owe my retailers $100 for food and sheets and all the stuff that I've used. So he takes the 100, hands it to the retailer, and says, we're paid. The retailer says, oh, I owe the wholesalers some money for all the stuff, products I bought for them. So he takes 100, hands it to the wholesaler, they're paid. The wholesaler has a, finger quotes, girlfriend that he owes $100 to, so he pays her, they're paid. The girl does her work at the hotel, so she pays the hotel the $100, they're paid. The guy comes back down from downstairs and says, you know what, I've decided I'm not going to stay, picks up his $100 and walks out. Everybody got paid, no money switched hands. Think about that. That money just made the loop. No money changed hands. That's how we do this today. It's all ones and zeros. You guys know, like, the top 3 or 4 richest people are worth more money than it's printed. They are worth more than we actually have printed. So the point to that was, I sell him that, I assign that, okay? That's how this economy works. I make the money by selling it at a discount from the 200, but I gave men the 100. When there is a law, how many people in here are the older brother or sister? Me? You guys? You guys probably did this to your little brothers and sisters. How many are the younger brother or sister? This always...
I answered correctly to both, right?
How many are the older brother or sister? Not are and O. Okay, I'll give you that one. I thought I had an aneurysm because she raised her hand on both of them.
There's tons of years between us. So.
Roses are red and violets are blue. I'm schizophrenic and so am I.
Well,
Yeah. If you're the younger, this happened to you. Did you ever play that game where you said, hey, give me that one and I'll give you this one?
yeah.
And then they gave it to you and you ran away and kept them both? Yeah. I still do that to my brother. He's 49. He still falls for it all the time, okay? All the younger kids in here went, flashback. There is a clause inside of the mortgage. It's called the defeasance clause. The defeasance clause says that what I just explained can't happen. If I give the bank all of my money, monthly $360 payments like I'm supposed to, they have to give me the lien release. They cannot keep both the money and the lien, both. If they do, they're in violation of federal law. Same thing in the three-party system. If I make the bank all my payments, that third party has to give me that reconveyance deed. They can't take the money and keep the deed both. That's a violation of the defeasance clause in a mortgage. So there actually is a clause in our favor. If I do what I'm supposed to do, you have to do what you're supposed to do. And if you don't, you're in trouble. All right? So that's the defeasance clause inside of that. That is the satisfaction or the release of the lien, as well as potentially the reconveyance deed, depending on what state you're in. There's a paragraph in the mortgage that says they are allowed to start what they call an impound account or an escrow account for, look, guess what, two accounts? Taxes and insurance, hence the word pity payment. So if your bank is forcing you to make a pity payment, they have an escrow account. There is a clause inside of the mortgage that says they have the right to start that for you. They're going to start in a bank account called the escrow account. It's called the modulant account real estate taxes and the modulant account insurance. And every month when I make some of my pity payment, they're going to take some of it, put it in that escrow account, some of it, put it in that escrow account. All right? If I'm in a special house that has flood insurance, that requires a flood insurance policy on top of my homeowners, they will actually have an escrow account for me on top of that. So it's almost like a pity E. A pity E. There's another insurance account. So you'd have your homeowner's insurance, then you may also have a flood insurance if you're required to have flood insurance. All right? So that's another mortgage or another clause inside of there. Let's go to the audio file.